GPT 5.4 just cut token usage by 40% while increasing accuracy, making every other model instantly overpriced.
Wait, 40% fewer tokens? How is that even possible? So we're breaking down the benchmarks, the real-world performance, and whether it actually lives up to these claims?
By minute 4, you'll know exactly how much you could save next month. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the AI Daily Podcast, today's news and a deep dive to help you stay ahead in AI.
Today, we're diving into OpenAI launches GPT-4.5 Thinking and Pro.
Stick around to the end for today's headlines. Let's dive right in.
So let's talk about OpenAI's latest move with GPT 5.4 Thinking and Pro. They're calling it their most capable frontier model for professional work. And honestly, the timing here is fascinating. We're seeing them drop new models at an almost breakneck pace. We literally just covered GPT 5.3 Instant earlier this week.
Yeah, the versioning is getting a bit wild, isn't it? They skipped right over 5.3 for the mainstream model. But what really caught my eye was this thinking branding. That's a pretty bold claim, suggesting the model can actually reason through problems.
Right, and here's where it gets interesting for our listeners who are building AI-powered applications. This isn't just about raw performance improvements. They're fundamentally changing how the model approaches complex tasks. The new feature where GPT 5.4 Thinking shows its reasoning plan up front, that's a game changer for debugging and steering AI behavior in production systems.
So you can actually see what the model's planning to do before it burns through thousands of tokens?
Exactly. Think about it from an engineering perspective. You're building a customer service bot or a code generation tool. Previously, if the model went off on a tangent, you'd only know after it generated a wall of text. Now you can course correct midstream. That's huge for cost control and user experience.
But let's talk about those costs for a second. The pricing jump is pretty steep. We're looking at $30 per million input tokens for the Pro version, up from $21. That's a 43% increase.
True, but OpenAI is making an interesting argument here. They claim the models are more token efficient, so you'll actually use fewer tokens to get the same results. It's the classic pay more per unit, but use less overall pitch. Whether that math works out in practice, well, that's what engineering teams will need to evaluate.
And they're removing the beta label for the 1 million token context window. That's massive for handling large code bases or document sets.
Absolutely. For platform engineers dealing with infrastructure as code, being able to feed in entire Terraform configurations or Kubernetes manifests without chunking, that opens up entirely new use cases. You could potentially have the AI analyze your entire infrastructure setup in one go.
Though I noticed requests over 272,000 tokens count double against usage limits. That's something teams will need to factor into their capacity planning.
Good catch. It's OpenAI's way of managing compute resources while still offering the capability. But here's what's really interesting. They're positioning this as combining the coding capabilities of GPT 5.3 Codex with better support for spreadsheets, documents, and presentations. That suggests they're targeting the enterprise automation market hard.
Speaking of which, the Pro version won't be available in Codex. That seems like an odd limitation given how code-heavy many Pro use cases would be.
I think that's actually smart product segmentation. At those prices, you don't want developers accidentally spinning up expensive Pro instances for routine coding tasks. It forces intentional usage patterns.
The benchmark improvements are noteworthy too. 18% fewer errors overall, 33% reduction in false claims. For production systems where accuracy matters, those aren't trivial gains.
And this is all happening while Anthropic just pushed out Claude 3.5 Sonnet with its own reasoning improvements, and Google's Gemini is gaining serious traction. The AI race isn't slowing down. If anything, it's accelerating.
It really feels like we're watching the equivalent of the browser wars or the mobile OS battles, but compressed into months instead of years.
That's a perfect analogy. And just like those battles shaped how we build and deploy software today, these AI model iterations are going to fundamentally change how platform engineers architect systems. The question isn't whether to integrate AI anymore, it's how to do it efficiently and cost-effectively.
So what does this mean for teams that just migrated to GPT 5.2 or are still on GPT-4?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Coming up, we'll dig into exactly how these improvements translate to real-world applications, what the migration path looks like, and whether the performance increases justify the price increases. We'll also explore how this fits into OpenAI's broader strategy and what it signals about where the industry is headed. All right, let's break down what these improvements actually mean in practice. The enhanced web search and context maintenance capabilities, that's addressing one of the biggest pain points in current AI applications.
How so?
Well, think about building a research assistant or a documentation bot. Current models often lose track of context over long conversations or when switching between web searches and analysis. GPT 5.4's improvements here mean you could build more sophisticated multi-step workflows without the AI forgetting what it was doing halfway through.
Oh, that's huge for something like automated incident response. The model could search logs, cross-reference documentation, and maintain the full context of the investigation.
Exactly. And the improved tool selection is equally important. When you're giving an AI agent access to multiple APIs or functions, having it reliably pick the right tool for the job is critical. OpenAI says they've significantly improved this capability.
But how much of this is marketing versus measurable improvement? The benchmarks they're showing look good, but benchmarks don't always translate to real-world performance.
Fair point. Let's look at the specific numbers. On their MMLU benchmark, that's testing general knowledge across multiple domains, GPT 5.4 Pro hits 94.1%, up from 92.3% on GPT 5.2 Pro. That's getting into territory where the model knows more than most human experts in many fields.
Which raises some interesting questions about validation and fact-checking. If the AI is right 94% of the time, do humans start to blindly trust that other 6%?
That's the paradox of improving AI. The better it gets, the harder it becomes to catch its mistakes. But here's where the thinking aspect becomes crucial. By showing its reasoning, you can at least audit the logic path, even if you can't verify every fact.
Let's talk about the actual implementation. How would a team migrate from, say, GPT 5.2 to 5.4?
The API endpoints are staying consistent, so it's mainly a model parameter change. But the real work is in optimization. Since the pricing is higher, you'll want to audit your prompts and workflows. Can you leverage the better reasoning to use fewer API calls? Can the improved accuracy reduce your need for validation loops?
And what about the 1 million token context window? That seems like it could fundamentally change how we architect AI features.
Absolutely. Instead of complex chunking and summarization pipelines, you could potentially process entire documents in one go. Imagine feeding in your entire infrastructure configuration and asking for security vulnerabilities or optimization opportunities.
Though at 2x token counting above 272K, that could get expensive fast.
True, but consider the engineering hours saved. If you're currently maintaining complex document processing pipelines, the simplification might be worth it. It's a build versus buy calculation, but with token costs instead of traditional pricing.
What about latency? These thinking models typically take longer to respond.
OpenAI hasn't released specific latency numbers yet, but based on their previous thinking models, expect response times in the 10 to 30 second range for complex queries. That's fine for batch processing or background tasks, but not great for real-time user interactions.
So you'd probably want a hybrid approach, GPT 5.3 Instant for user-facing features, GPT 5.4 Thinking for complex background processing.
Exactly. And that's where OpenAI's product strategy becomes clear. They're not trying to build one model to rule them all. They're creating a portfolio where each model has its sweet spot.
But that complexity could be a challenge for smaller teams. Now you need to understand the trade-offs between multiple models, manage different rate limits, optimize for different token costs.
It's definitely adding operational complexity. But let's zoom out and look at what this means for OpenAI's position in the market. They're essentially creating a premium tier that competitors will struggle to match without similar infrastructure investments.
How does this compare to what Anthropic and Google are doing?
Anthropic's Claude 3.5 Sonnet is competitive on reasoning tasks and actually cheaper for many use cases. Google's Gemini Pro 1.5 has that massive context window too, up to 2 million tokens. But OpenAI's advantage is ecosystem maturity, better tooling, more integrations, larger community.
And Microsoft's Azure integration gives them enterprise distribution that others can't match.
Right. This isn't just about model capabilities anymore. It's about the entire platform. OpenAI is betting that enterprises will pay premium prices for a premium experience, not just raw performance.
But is that sustainable? If open source models keep improving and companies like Meta keep releasing powerful models for free,
That's the key question. Stick around because in our next segment, we'll dive into exactly what this means for your AI strategy, how to evaluate whether these premium models make sense for your use case, and what signals to watch for in this rapidly evolving landscape. All right, let's get practical. If you're a platform engineer or architect listening to this, what should you actually do with this information?
Yeah, because it's easy to get caught up in the hype cycle. Every week there's a new model claiming to be revolutionary.
First decision point. Do you need a thinking model at all? If your use cases are primarily quick responses, chatbots, simple code completion, basic Q&A, stick with the instant models. The latency and cost overhead of thinking models isn't justified.
But for complex analysis, code review, architectural decisions,
That's where GPT-5.4 Thinking shines. Here's a simple framework. If a task would take a human more than 30 seconds of actual thinking, it's probably a good candidate for a thinking model. Less than that, use instant models.
What about the Pro tier? When does that make sense?
Pro is for when accuracy really matters and you can afford the premium. Think medical diagnosis assistance, financial analysis, legal document review. If a mistake costs more than the difference in API pricing, Pro might be justified.
Any specific implementation tips?
Absolutely. First, implement prompt caching if you haven't already. With these prices, reusing system prompts becomes even more important. Second, build model routing into your architecture from day one. Don't hard-code model selection. Make it configurable so you can optimize as you learn usage patterns.
Ah, that's smart. You could even build automatic routing based on query complexity.
Exactly. Use a cheaper model to classify the query complexity, then route to the appropriate tier. It's like having a load balancer for AI models.
What about monitoring and cost control?
Critical areas. Set up alerting not just on total spend, but on tokens per request metrics. A sudden spike might indicate prompt injection attacks or inefficient queries. Also, implement hard limits per user or per feature to prevent runaway costs.
Speaking of security, any new considerations with these models?
The thinking model's ability to show their reasoning is actually a security feature. You can audit what the model is planning before it executes. But it also means you need to be careful about exposing that reasoning to end users. It might reveal system prompts or internal logic.
Looking forward, what should teams be preparing for?
3 things. First, expect this pricing model to become the norm. Premium capabilities at premium prices. Budget accordingly. Second, multi-model architectures will become standard. Plan for orchestration complexity. Third, context windows will keep growing. Start thinking about use cases that were impossible with smaller contexts.
Any predictions on where this is heading?
We're seeing the AI market segment like any mature technology market. Just like we have different tiers of compute instances or database offerings, we'll have AI models optimized for different use cases and price points. The winners will be platforms that make it easy to mix and match.
So it's less about picking the best model and more about building flexible architectures.
Precisely. The teams that win will be those that can quickly evaluate new models, A/B test in production, and optimize their model mix based on real usage data.
Any final advice?
Don't chase every new model release. Set up a regular evaluation cycle, maybe quarterly, where you test new models against your specific use cases, and always measure the total cost of ownership, not just API prices. A more expensive model that reduces engineering overhead might be cheaper overall.
Makes sense. It's like choosing between managed services and self-hosted solutions.
Here's my closing thought. We're watching the AI industry mature in real time. The experimental phase is ending, and the operational phase is beginning. The organizations that treat AI models as managed infrastructure with proper capacity planning, cost optimization, and architectural flexibility will have a massive advantage.
And hopefully our listeners are now better equipped to navigate that transition.
That's the goal. The pace of change in AI isn't slowing down, but the patterns are becoming clearer. Focus on building flexible, observable, cost-controlled AI systems, and you'll be ready for whatever comes next. Before we wrap up, let's catch up on this week's infrastructure news. There's a fascinating new development in AI security. Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.6 just uncovered 22 vulnerabilities in Firefox. And get this, these represent a significant chunk of the high-severity bugs Mozilla patched throughout 2025.
Wait, so we're talking about AI finding security flaws that human researchers might have missed? That's both impressive and slightly terrifying.
The Hacker News reports that Anthropic didn't stop at just finding the vulnerabilities. They actually tasked the AI with developing exploits for them. It's a controlled demonstration of offensive AI capabilities in cybersecurity.
Speaking of Anthropic, TechCrunch is covering some controversy around their Pentagon dealings. Apparently, there's concern this might scare other AI startups away from defense contracts.
The scrutiny around defense work is intense. The article explores whether startups will think twice before pursuing military contracts after seeing the backlash Anthropic faced.
It's a tough balance, national security needs versus public perception and ethical concerns.
On the legal front, Axios reports that lawsuits alleging AI chatbots inspired violent acts are pushing the safety debate into courtrooms. We're seeing cases against Google's Gemini and other platforms.
This could force Congress's hand on federal AI safety standards before state-level regulations create a patchwork of rules. The courts might end up defining AI safety policy by default.
In the open source world, there's an interesting upgrade to the Qwen 3.5 2B model. Hugging Face showcases a version that's been fine-tuned using Claude 4.6 Opus distillation for better reasoning capabilities.
So they're essentially teaching smaller models to think like larger ones. That's clever, getting premium performance in a more accessible package.
Exactly. The training pipeline and datasets are detailed for anyone wanting to replicate the approach.
And for developers using Light LLM, version 1.82.dev2 just dropped as a security release. Key updates include fixing JSON schema preservation for Gemini 2.0 and proper mapping of reasoning effort parameters for those new Claude 4.6 models we mentioned.
They've also optimized spend log deletion and added support for Gemini 3.1 Flash image preview in their model database. Looks like they're keeping pace with all these new model releases.
The Claude 4.6 integration is particularly timely, given what we just heard about its security capabilities.
That wraps up today's news. That's our show for today.
If you found this valuable, please subscribe and share with a friend who'd appreciate it.
Drop us a comment with your thoughts on today's topic.
Links to everything we discussed are in the show notes.
Until next time.